The Galactic Senate smelled like overripe fruit and burnt metal. Susie Connolly smiled politely as the olfactory assault wafted past her, standing just off-center in the marble-paneled chamber, while 1,000 alien delegates floated, slithered, or stood stiffly on their platforms, arranged in the spiral tiers of galactic authority. A shimmering orb translated the floor speeches into her earpiece in perfect Earth English, although Susie doubted its designers had fully grasped sarcasm or passive aggression. Still, the machine did its best. And in conclusion, the reappearance of human activity poses no threat to the integrity of the Empire, declared a bulbous representative from the Uran Combine. His skin pulsed faintly with self-importance. They are, after all, a species defined by emotional volatility, combustion-based weaponry, and a baffling obsession with territorial flags. Laughter rippled across the chamber, resonating in tones, scents, and pheromone emissions. Susie nodded in acknowledgement, sipping from a dented silver thermos. The coffee inside had long since gone cold, but it was the ritual that mattered. She stood alone on the Senate floor in a plain uniform, unarmed, her boots dusty from the long shuttle ride. A faded Earth Forces insignia was the only mark of her origin. Behind her, Zintorm Avok crept forward nervously, his 4 stalk eyes scanning the crowd. He was her assigned cultural liaison, a historian by training, pacifist by belief, and coward by nature. His soft chitter vibrated with anxious energy. "They mock you," he whispered in a tone like rustling leaves. "I noticed," Susie replied mildly, eyes still fixed on the rows of alien delegates above. Zintorm tugged the edge of her sleeve. "Perhaps you could clarify your request. A retrieval mission to a dead planet? For a piece of outdated human machinery? They think you're joking." Susie let the smile curl just a little wider. "That's all right. I've always liked being underestimated." The high speaker descended from his dais, his translucent skin gleaming with stored light. A towering being of thought and protocol, he tilted his massive head toward her, projecting what was meant to be diplomatic patience. "Lieutenant Connolly," he said in a voice like cracking ice, "as the last known representative of a non-participant species, you are granted this audience as a courtesy. We remind you that Earth has been officially quarantined since the Treaty of Pale Stars. Its cultures are considered," he paused delicately, "unstable." Susie inclined her head. "I'm not here to challenge the treaty." "Then why make a request at all?" Her thermos clicked as she recapped it. "I'd like access to Sector 9A on Earth's surface. There's a piece of military salvage we'd like returned." Gasps fluttered like wind through the chamber. One delegate emitted a sound like a blender full of gravel. Another turned a shade of violent green. "A relic?" the high speaker asked. "What purpose could such primitive technology serve? The Empire has long since surpassed." "Closure," Susie interrupted gently. "I believe that's what your cultures call it. For memorial purposes. Nothing more." Zintorm blinked his stalk eyes rapidly. The lie was so smooth he almost believed it. A chorus of dismissive sounds echoed from the delegates. One particularly large figure rose from a crystalline hoverpod, General Crown of the Varn Dominion, a scaled monstrosity with tusks the size of a human femur. His voice boomed through the chamber. "The human seeks to retrieve a tank. Perhaps she also requires a sword and a shield to complete her ancient rituals." More laughter, sharp and derisive. Susie clasped her hands behind her back. "I wouldn't mind, actually, but the tank will do." General Crown snorted steam. "And what, precisely, do you intend to do with it?" She smiled sweetly. "Polish it." The general leaned forward with a leer. "Perhaps you'd like to challenge one of our recon units to a duel? Just you and your antique." Zintorm whispered in panic. "Don't accept. Please do not accept." "I'm afraid we've gotten off track," Susie said, still facing the council. "This is not a request to start a war. It's a cultural mission. I believe the Galactic Code allows for such reclamation efforts, yes." Murmurs stirred. The code, maddeningly egalitarian, allowed minor requests from all recognized species, even extinct ones. The Senate's refusal would be seen as symbolic suppression. The High Speaker raised a hand. "Very well. The Council grants access to Sector 9A for a duration of 48 hours. You may retrieve your object. He paused, then added with a faint tremor of disdain. For closure. Susie bowed gracefully. Much appreciated. As the delegates dispersed in flurries of color and light, Zintorm hissed beside her. That was reckless. These beings believe you're a joke. That's the idea, she replied. The shuttle that carried them down to Earth was slow and creaky, piloted by an ancient drone programmed to avoid anything remotely interesting. Susie sat with her boots up on a crate, sipping coffee again. Zintorm perched nervously, pressing a cloth to his nasal slits. I still don't understand, he muttered. You knew they'd mock you. Why even attend the Senate? Because nothing frightens an empire more than a quiet human with manners, she said. Zintorm let out a mournful whine. Earth is ashes. We documented it. Your civilization self-destructed. Susie's eyes didn't leave the viewport. The cloud-wrapped surface of Earth drifted closer. Self-destructed? No. We just decluttered. Their landing site was an old military zone in the American Midwest. The once proud base was overgrown with silvergrass and bone-white trees that had adapted to the long abandonment. Collapsed hangars yawned in silence. The sky overhead was pale and cracked with the scars of long-lost battles. Zintorm sneezed as the dry wind hit them. Why here? Why this place? Susie walked with purpose, boots crunching over rust and dust. Because we buried our monsters here, and one of them has been waiting. A bunker entrance lay beneath a crumbled statue of a soldier. Susie traced the name etched into the base, to those who stayed. The keypad blinked dead, but she pulled a small device from her pack, a fragment of pre-war hardware. When she pressed it to the console, the doors groaned open like a beast exhaling. Inside, the silence was thicker. Rows of tanks sat in dignified repose, their hulls rusted but intact. Susie walked slowly down the corridor, reverent as if in a cathedral. This is madness, Zintorm whispered. These machines are obsolete. No shields, no energy capacitors, no aerial deployment. And yet, she said, running her fingers along a tank's hull, no species ever figured out how to beat one in a straight fight. She stopped before one tank in particular. Its treads were scarred. Its barrel was adorned with a faded decal of a winking skull in a cowboy hat. The name etched along its side read, Old Bastard. Zintorm paled. This is the one. Susie placed a palm flat against the hull. A vibration answered her. System online, said a voice from within, smooth and metallic. Operator recognized. Long nap, ma'am. Time to wake the bastards. Her smile returned, this one genuine, laced with steel. You bet, sweetheart. With a hiss of pressure and a thrum of dormant systems roaring back to life, Old Bastard powered on. Rust flaked from its sides like shedding skin. Lights glowed. A low hum of readiness filled the air. Zintorm stumbled backward, eyes wide. That thing is alive. She's more than alive, Susie said. She remembers. Above them, satellites blinked back to consciousness, just brief flickers, pulses like a heartbeat. Nothing dramatic. Not yet. As Susie climbed into the operator seat, the tank's interior lit up with command options, not in any known galactic interface, but the clunky, stubborn, distinctly human script of military English. Zintorm stood frozen, mouth working. Why would you bring this back now, after centuries of silence? Because the galaxy thinks we're extinct, she said, adjusting the targeting array with practiced hands. And I think it's time they remembered why they were scared of us in the first place. The tank's engine rumbled like a storm building underground. Far above, in the Senate chambers, footage began circulating, shaky drone images of Susie standing beside the tank. Aliens laughed. Commentators joked. She brought a museum piece. Is it powered by fossil fuel? Primitive species always cling to their toys. Susie watched the feed from her interface. She chuckled. They're laughing, Zintorm said, trembling. Susie nodded. They should. It'll make the silence sweeter. And with that, the M1 Abrams, old, proud, and now very much alive, rolled out of the dust of Earth, carrying the last soldier of a species that never truly lost. They just waited for the right moment to return. The skies above shifted. The wind changed. And somewhere deep beneath the surface of Earth, other systems stirred. Susie's voice crackled over the feed. "Send word to the Senate," she said, smiling. "Closure's on its way. And it's got armor." The tank rolled through the cracked streets of an old American city, its treads grinding over vines, bones, and the shattered remnants of forgotten empires. Silence lay thick over the ruins, but inside the cockpit of Old Bastard, there was the soft, familiar hum of purpose. Susie Connolly sat in the command chair with the ease of someone born to sit there, one boot propped on the console, hands tapping controls as her eyes tracked data flooding in from long-dormant satellites. "You've gained weight," she murmured to the tank. The onboard AI snorted digitally, added some upgrades, swapped out the main processor for an adaptive neural module. "You always said I lacked intuition. And did that fix it?" "Nope. But I learned to fake it." Susie smiled and leaned forward. "Run diagnostics. Bring up local scans. I want power traces, heat, radiation, anything that smells like buried tech." From the back of the cabin, Zintorm squeaked as the tank hit a pothole and nearly launched him into a ceiling support. "This is unsafe," he shouted, clinging to a handrail. "The vehicle lacks inertial dampeners." "This vehicle," Susie replied calmly, "survived 4 terrestrial wars, 2 internal rebellions, and an EMP shower that melted half the sky. Buckle up." Zintorm collapsed into the second seat, twitching. "You're operating it like it's alive." Susie didn't answer at first. Her fingers moved across the interface, an array of buttons, toggles, and screen panels marked in chipped paint and stubborn English abbreviations. "She is alive," she said eventually. "Every tank that went through combat long enough picked up something. Ghosts, maybe. Memories. Or maybe just human spite, made metal." The screen lit up with a flicker. An energy signature pulsed beneath the ground, low buried, but still warm. Susie sat straighter. "Found one." Zintorm blinked. "Found what?" "An old network node. Looks like it's tied to the Atlas defense grid." Zintorm's skin paled 3 shades. "Atlas? That was just a myth." "No," Susie said, smiling faintly. "Atlas was a promise." Old Bastard turned smoothly down a street once called Montgomery Avenue, rolling past rusted light poles and collapsed skyscrapers. The sky was a yellow haze, heavy with radiation particles the alien terraforming teams had never fully scrubbed. Susie pulled on a breather mask out of habit. Zintorm's rebreather clicked nervously as it filtered out carcinogens. They stopped at the edge of what looked like an underground parking garage. Only this one was reinforced with depleted uranium plating and bore the faint stencil. U.S. Strategic Defense Node, Blackout Classification. "Lovely," Susie said, hopping down from the tank. "Time for archaeology." Zintorm scrambled after her. "You shouldn't go in there alone." "I'm not," she said, patting the tank. "She's watching." Susie disappeared into the shadows, flashlight cutting narrow paths through the darkness. Dust fell in fine curtains from a ceiling. Somewhere beneath her boots, old circuits hummed, recognizing a familiar pattern, the return of something human. It took 20 minutes to reach the node. A concrete slab guarded a sealed console, black with soot and time. Susie dropped to one knee, popped the panel open, and inserted a rusted access key no wider than a fingernail. The slab vibrated. Lights flickered. Authorization accepted. "Welcome, Lieutenant Connolly." Zintorm's voice echoed behind her. "How many places have your people hidden things?" "All of them," she said, grinning. The wall shifted open with a whine of stubborn machinery, revealing racks of equipment, dormant drones, railgun casings, crates marked, "Do not deploy," without final protocol. But what caught Susie's eye was the circular console in the center. She approached it reverently. "This is it," she said. "The relay node. With this we link the tank into the old planetary defense mesh." "You mean you're activating Earth's war grid?" Zintorm's voice cracked like ice. "Not the full thing. Just a whisper. Enough to wake up a few old friends." Zintorm took a step back. "Susie, you asked for permission to retrieve one tank. This is manipulation." "No," Susie said, pressing her hand to the console. "This is chess." As the interface glowed, dormant signals began to awaken. Silent towers on the far side of the planet blinked for the first time in centuries. In distant orbit, a hidden satellite reoriented its dish. Subroutines crawled back online, cautious and curious. The machine mind of Earth stirred, recognizing an operator. Back in the tank, old bastard pinged her. Signal acquired. Network partial. Routing systems engaged. "Good girl," Susie whispered. Zintorm watched her with something close to fear. "You tricked the Empire." "I told them the truth. I just left out what closure means in our culture. They think you're salvaging a relic. Then they'll be very surprised when the relic shoots back." Susie stood and looked around the room. Most of this gear's not usable, not without a proper power core. But the signal's enough. The Empire thinks we're dead. All I need to do is prove we're worse than dead. We're waiting. They spent the rest of the day mapping the surviving nodes, connecting what little remained of Earth's defense systems. The process was slow. Some links were corroded, others so deep underground they barely responded. But piece by piece, the mesh took shape. That evening, while Susie calibrated the tank's weapons, Zintorm sat on a broken crate, watching her with wide eyes. "You're not what I expected," he said softly. "Most humans aren't," she replied. "You're polite, efficient. You drink bitter fluids and smile when you're insulted." She smirked. "You think those are contradictions? I thought your kind was emotional, erratic. We are. But we plan our chaos." Zintorm folded his arms. "Why are you doing this?" "Really?" Susie set down her toolkit. "You ever hear the story of the mongoose and the cobra?" "No." She leaned back against the tank. "There's a snake, big, proud, venomous. Owns the jungle. Everyone's scared of it. Then one day, a mongoose shows up. Small. Fast. Doesn't look dangerous. The cobra laughs. Until the mongoose sinks its teeth in the back of its skull." Zintorm tilted his head. "Are you the mongoose? I'm just the reminder that humans don't make peace because we're weak. We make it because we're tired. But if we wake up..." He didn't finish the thought. Neither did she. The next morning, a message pinged across Susie's comms. The Empire was watching and laughing. Images had gone viral on the Galactic mesh, her in the tank, driving through ruins like a child playing dress-up. Commentators across alien media speculated on the motives. Was she seeking glory, mourning, or just deluded? One analyst said, "This is why humans failed. They build weapons as if weight mattered more than energy. That thing couldn't scratch a scout drone." Another chimed in, "Next she'll be digging up swords and catapults." Susie sent no reply. Instead, she activated the uplink, broadcasting a private challenge to the Empire's observer fleet. To her surprise, they accepted. Hours later, they met on the cracked plains of what was once Kansas, beneath a rust-red sky. A temporary arena had been constructed, a ceremonial battleground, surrounded by levitating cameras and alien spectators in hoverpods. The event was billed as a friendly trial of strength, ancient versus advanced. Susie climbed into the tank. Her opponent was a sleek bipedal walker, fast, nimble, bristling with plasma weaponry, piloted by a Zalari veteran with 300 confirmed kills and no sense of humor. As the battle began, the crowd chuckled. Commentators offered sarcastic blow-by-blow. Susie didn't respond. She moved the tank slowly, letting the walker circle, show off, probe her defenses. When the first plasma blast came, she didn't dodge. She absorbed it, letting the old reactive armor do what it was built for. The walker hesitated. Susie fired. The main cannon barked like thunder. The shell tore through the air and slammed into the walker's side, shattering its shields. The crowd gasped. She moved forward again. Calculated. Cold. Unflinching. Old bastard, initiate spread pattern. Like riding a bike, the AI said cheerfully. 3 shots, perfectly spaced, crippled the walker's legs. Another hit took out the control module. The alien pilot ejected just before the cockpit exploded. The field went silent. No one laughed. Susie emerged from the hatch, brushing dust from her jacket. "Is that closure enough?" she asked the cameras. The footage went viral again. This time, no one joked. Military analysts dissected her movements. Strategists panicked. The Empire's command chain went quiet. Susie returned to base, quiet and composed. Zintorm waited at the door. "They're afraid now," he whispered. She nodded. "Good. This was all a message." She stepped past him. Not a message. A preview. He followed her inside. "What happens now?" She turned, face unreadable. Now they asked themselves the one question we wanted them to ask. Zintorm swallowed. "Which is?" She leaned close, whispering like a secret. "If she's the last, how many more are there?" That night, in systems far beyond Earth, coded transmissions sparked to life. Hidden relays. Deep-buried AIs. Human-made satellites that never forgot their commands. Somewhere on a shattered moon, a signal blinked twice, the mark of readiness. Susie watched it all unfold on a flickering terminal. She didn't smile this time. "Let them fear the relics," she said quietly. "It's the people they should have worried about." Old Bastard hummed in agreement. And the war that hadn't begun, not officially, not yet, started to feel very, very real. Susie Connolly leaned against Old Bastard as dawn spilled across the ruins. Light touched the tank's battered armor, glinting off welded scars and half-erased stenciling. The previous day's battle had left a cratered field and a silent galaxy in its wake. For the first time in centuries, a human war machine had faced down an elite alien strike unit and walked away unscathed. The tank had been the weapon. Susie had been the message. Zintorm perched nearby, silent for once. He no longer looked like a historian. He looked like someone sitting too close to a fire and finally feeling the heat. "They're not laughing anymore," he said quietly. Susie didn't look at him. "No. Now they're listening." "And what are we saying?" She shrugged. That extinction was never surrender. Just intermission. Overhead, a Varn Imperial Scout cruiser passed low, its silhouette sleek and smooth, casting a long shadow. Its sensors locked briefly on the tank before disengaging. Watching. Not engaging. That had become a pattern. The Empire's fleet no longer mocked her presence. They documented it, recorded it, tried to analyze what couldn't be explained in data. Across the stars, the broadcast of Susie's victory was picked apart in slow motion. Experts in tactical forums debated how a human tank had torn through advanced shielding, how analog ballistics had outmaneuvered AI reaction cycles, how muscle memory had bested centuries of simulations. Theories were posed. None agreed. Few slept. Zintorm finally spoke again, voice hesitant. "They've sent a delegation." Susie turned to him. "You?" "No. Higher. From the Central Fleet. A diplomatic cruiser just arrived in orbit." He hesitated. "I think they want to negotiate." "Already?" She grinned. "They're early. I didn't even threaten them yet." The cruiser was 3 kilometers long, plated in silver-blue armor, its body shaped like a blade laid flat across the horizon. It hovered just outside Earth's gravity well, broadcasting nothing but coordinates and protocol requests. Susie agreed to meet them on neutral ground. She chose a broken bridge spanning a river long since run dry, flanked by the twisted skeletons of rusted cars. It was open, impossible to ambush, and human enough to make the aliens uneasy. The delegation arrived in a shuttle, as smooth as liquid metal. From its belly stepped 3 figures, a tall insectoid with mirrored wings, a crystalline diplomat pulsing with internal light, and a humanoid hybrid with too many fingers and too perfect a smile. The third spoke first. "Lieutenant Connolly," he said, offering a bow that was just slightly too shallow. "I am Envoy Vel of the Galactic Empire. We've come to clarify intentions." Susie sipped from her thermos. "Weird. I thought you came to apologize." The insectoid clicked its mandibles. "Your behavior has destabilized multiple sectors. Panic is spreading among the outer colonies. Even the core worlds are issuing readiness protocols." "Because of one tank?" she asked innocently. The crystal being shimmered. "Because of what the tank implies." "Then you're smarter than your generals." Envoy Vel smiled again. May we speak openly? She gestured to the bridge. That's why I brought coffee. They walked together along the cracked asphalt, stepping over old bones and ancient rebar. We believed humanity extinct, Vel said carefully. I know. We believed it because you disappeared. Quietly, without resistance. Susie chuckled. You ever hear the phrase quiet as a loaded gun? Vel paused. We underestimated your kind. No, she said. You misunderstood us. We smiled. You assumed we were soft. We paused. You assumed we were dead. But everything we left behind was part of the plan. The insectoid made a low hissing sound. There was no plan. Your people self-destructed in regional conflicts. Susie stopped walking. We got tired of being observed. So we gave you a show. You think extinction is messy? Try deliberate invisibility. Vel studied her. Are you alone? Depends. Are you asking how many are active or how many are sleeping? Silence fell. The envoy tried again. Your attack on the walker was disproportionate. I never attacked, she said, turning to face them. I defended. That was the agreement. You just didn't expect us to be good at it. You could have accepted defeat. Faded. Susie looked up at the stars. And what? Wait until your empire decided Earth was safe enough to recolonize? Start mining our history like it's a tourist trap. Zintorm watched the exchange from a distance. He could feel the fear building beneath the delegation's formal posture. Not because Susie had threatened them, but because she hadn't. The delegation left without further answers, claiming they would return with advisement. They didn't make eye contact as they re-entered their shuttle. Vel paused once at the top of the ramp. You're not what we expected, he said. Susie smiled, slow and patient. No one ever sees the knife until it's between the ribs. That night, the sky above Earth flickered. Susie stood on the command deck of Old Bastard, watching a dozen new satellites come online. Not human, not alien, something in between. Triggers placed centuries ago, now reawakening. They weren't weapons yet, but they could be. The galaxy would assume they were. That was enough. Zintorm approached her slowly, as if afraid of being near her when history changed. I've been listening to the feeds, he said. There's chaos. Ships are pulling out of fringe colonies. The galactic market is fluctuating. Recruitment has doubled in 5 systems. Panic is the first symptom, Susie replied. They're afraid of you. They should be. But not because of me. Zintorm frowned. Then what? Because if one of me could do this, what happens when they realize there were never just one? In the far distance, lights shimmered in the shape of a signal flare. Not a distress beacon, an invitation. Susie's tank moved through the night, slowly carving a path through lands where empires had once planned monuments. Now, the ground shook at her passing. Another battle was proposed by the Empire, but this time in space, aboard a neutral station orbiting Titan. Susie accepted without pause. The Titan station was old but functional. A ring of spires surrounding a central arena, used for ritualized disputes. For centuries, it had been a stage for honor-bound duels and diplomatic games. Now, it would host something very different. Her opponent was a mechanized warform called Keshrak 9, an elite construct driven by a collective neural core, deadly, adaptive, and precise. It had ended riots with a glance, stopped revolutions mid-breath. No one had ever made it take a step back. Susie arrived in a pressure-sealed dropship. Old Bastard had been retrofitted for zero-grav maneuvering, a technology once deemed incompatible with Earth's war machines. But Susie had made it work. Zintorm accompanied her up until the hangar gates. They think they've outclassed you this time, he said nervously. They still don't understand the difference between technology and will. He handed her a small token, something ancient and worn, a silver coin from Earth's last year of open trade. For luck, he murmured. She accepted it, tucking it into her collar. Luck is just preparation with better PR. Inside the arena, Keshrak 9 waited, sleek, humanoid, bristling with quantum knives and phase blades. Old Bastard rolled in with a clank. The crowd buzzed with the hunger of war. The duel began. Keshrak, 9 moved like lightning, its blades arcing through vacuum in perfect patterns. Old Bastard dodged the first few strikes, with unnatural grace for its size. Susie countered with a burst of kinetic flares, bouncing her shots off debris to angle behind the construct. The second round came faster. Keshrak, 9 altered tactics, switching to shockwaves and destabilizing pulses. Susie responded by disabling gravity entirely. The tank floated for a moment, awkward, inelegant, then slammed the arena wall, tread spinning, barrel locking mid-twist. One shot. One devastating slug. It broke through the construct's adaptive plating and split its core mid-pivot. Silence. No escape pod. No counter. Susie's voice echoed through the transmission feed. You brought a knife to a tank fight. When she returned to Earth, they met her with no cheering. No ceremony. Just stunned silence and shadowed glances. Everyone had seen it. The Empire's pride gutted with a single shell. Later that night, as she walked the perimeter alone, Zintorm found her again. You're forcing their hand, he said. I'm holding up a mirror, she replied. Some of them want to negotiate. Others want to eliminate you. Susie nodded. Let them come. One by one or all at once. Doesn't change the end. Zintorm hesitated, then spoke carefully. There's talk of invoking the Resolution Protocol. She looked at him. Planetary sterilization? He nodded once. Susie exhaled slowly. Then we move faster. She led him back to the bunker, past the tank, past the old base, to a hidden panel beneath the rubble of a library. With a palm scan and a blood sample, the ground opened. Below lay a vault, and inside that vault, rows of cryopods. Some broken, most still functioning. Each one held a soldier. Some men, some women, all human. Susie didn't look back. They thought we died. We just went cold. Zintorm's breath caught in his throat. She turned to him. They wanted to bury us. They forgot who taught the galaxy how to dig. As the cryopods began to warm and the systems hummed back to life, she whispered something soft, half prayer, half promise. Laugh while you can. Because by the time the Empire stopped laughing, it would already be too late. The sky above Earth fractured like glass as the Empire's first sterilization weapon entered orbit. It gleamed cold, perfect, patient, its orbit a quiet promise of annihilation. In the deep dark between stars, the Galactic Empire had stopped laughing. Their messages no longer dripped with satire or superiority. Now they came silent, encrypted, delivered with urgency and phrases like containment, neutralization, and final measures. Susie Connolly stood at the edge of the ruined base, her breath rising in slow plumes. The cold had returned to the wind, a taste of winter creeping across the landscape. The cryopods beneath her feet had begun to breathe again. Some had opened. Others were hissing quietly, warming up bones that had not moved in centuries. Each body that emerged was a lesson forgotten by the galaxy. Old Bastard's engine idled behind her, the tank waiting like a loaded sentence. Zintorm stood beside it, shoulders hunched, expression unreadable. He had stopped asking questions. Now he only watched the pods open, watched the ghosts of a species walk again, watched Susie like she was a storm at the center of it all. How many? He asked finally, voice thin. 316 active, she said. Another 40 in cooldown. More across the other vaults. Zintorm looked at the sky. They're going to burn Earth. Susie didn't flinch. They'll try. He turned to her. You've known this would happen. Since the beginning. I knew what kind of creature the Empire is. You poke it, it roars. You stand tall, it postures. But when you make it afraid, truly afraid, it panics. And a panicked Empire is a murderous one. Susie nodded. That's why we needed the laughter first. We needed them smug, loud, careless. The trap only works when they think they're the ones setting it. Above them, the sterilizer's stabilizers began to glow. It was charging. Far beneath the planet's crust, the old Earth grid pulsed to life. The Atlas system had linked quietly over the past week, node by node, all hidden beneath the mask of a single tank. The Empire had traced Susie, surveilled her every move, and recorded her every step. But they had never looked behind her, never suspected the real payload wasn't the firepower, but the connection. One by one, Earth's dormant satellites twisted in orbit. Unmarked, unmapped, ancient, still operational. Old Bastard's interface lit up in soft red tones. Strike window open, awaiting target lock. Zintorm stared at the tank's console. "You're going to shoot it down?" "No," Susie said. "I'm going to invite it to shoot first." He looked at her, horrified. "Why?" "Because the Empire needs to justify their fear. If they fire, they cross a line. And once that happens, once they act on the fear they've spent centuries pretending they don't have, they fracture. Everyone who's ever felt their boot will know. The peace is a performance, and fear breaks performances. But Earth will." "No," she said, eyes locked to the sky. "It won't." The sterilizer fired. It was not a beam or a missile. It was an engineered collapse, an implosion wave of atmosphere-piercing pressure designed to erase continents. It hit Earth's upper thermosphere and triggered the defense mesh Susie had quietly reactivated across the globe. Invisible to the eye, the planetary grid, buried in oceans, sealed beneath mountains, orbiting in passive camouflage, activated. Magnetic lenses twisted. Pulse corridors flexed. The wave vanished mid-air, swallowed whole. No explosion. No noise. Just sudden, perfect silence. Across the Empire's sensors, the strike registered as gone. Not deflected. Not resisted. Erased. Susie smiled. "They just realize they don't understand us at all," she said. In orbit, the sterilizer began to retreat. Slowly. Uncertainly. The predator backing away from prey had already bitten. And Earth blinked. Not in light, but in signal. One broad, open-band transmission, fired into every corner of the Empire's territory. Not in code, not in encrypted threat, but in words. Human words. Susie's voice. "We don't die quietly. We don't forgive easily. And we never, ever come alone." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even loud, but it rippled through space like prophecy. Colonies, already aching under the Empire's weight, listened. Uprisings long suppressed twitched like nerves in the dark. And across the stars, the myth of human extinction shattered. Zintorm stared at her. "You wanted them to fire. You wanted them to fail. I wanted proof that their greatest weapon can't touch us anymore. Now we become the future they're not invited to." A new signal chimed from Old Bastard's feed. Not Empire. Not Susie's. Something older. A handshake protocol from deep space. She read it. Her breath caught for just a second. "What is it?" Zintorm asked. "Another vault," she murmured. "Woke up early." "Where?" She turned to him. "Mars." He blinked. "You stored people on Mars?" "We stored everything on Mars." Her voice turned quiet. "We stored the ones who didn't want peace." Zintorm's throat bobbed. "And you do?" Susie turned to face him fully. "I want peace, but peace on our terms. Not one imposed by an empire built on slavery, silence, and selective memory." She walked past him toward the command console. On the screen, the Empire's fleet formations had shifted. Defensive positions. Retreat vectors. Half their command nodes had gone dark, confused, jammed, overwhelmed. "They've already lost," she said softly. "They still have the numbers," Zintorm whispered. "But not the mind," Susie replied. "And not the momentum." At her command, the revived humans moved out, on foot, in tanks, in exosuits older than most species in the Senate. Not to invade, not to conquer, to be seen. Across the outer systems, Susie's transmission was replayed endlessly. Broken cultures remembered old alliances. Pirate groups began broadcasting the human standard. Even old Earth enemies, nations that once warred across continents, stood under one flag again, not because they forgave, but because no one else would ever understand what they'd survived. Susie activated the final protocol. Not a weapon, not a warhead, a truth. She released the archives. Human history, in its entirety, began flooding the Empire's networks, unedited, unfiltered. Wars, revolutions, extinction events, genetic horror, acts of unthinkable cruelty, and acts of overwhelming compassion. A record of what it meant to be human, not propaganda. Proof. Proof that a species capable of building hell and then choosing not to live in it was a species no one should provoke. Susie watched the data spread, saw it bypass firewalls, saw it infect their myths. Zintorm sat beside her now, silent, watching the storm ripple outward. "You're not a soldier," he said finally. "You're an architect." "I'm a survivor," she replied. "And survivors make better architects than conquerors." Above them, the sterilizer left orbit. Across the stars, the Empire fractured. And beneath Earth's ruined sky, the last human officer of the old world turned to the new one she'd built with steel, silence, and a well-timed smirk. "Old bastards, AI," broke the quiet. "Well, damn. I guess we're back." Susie exhaled. "No. Now we begin." And this time, the galaxy wouldn't get to laugh first.